Axe here, and we are live on the Syracuse Orange Football Facebook page. Coming off the heels of a pretty brutal loss for Syracuse football at the Carrier Dome. Final score at the Dome today, Duke 38, Syracuse 24, and a dominant performance by the Duke Blue Devils, to say the least, on Syracuse in this football game. That is the first win of the season for Duke. They improved to 1-4. Syracuse will fall to 1-3 on the season, losing that game coming out of their bye week and off a pretty impressive performance against Georgia Tech 2 weeks ago. But, well, that feels like 2 years ago at this point with how Syracuse looked on the field today against Duke. We are here chatting live about it. Appreciate everybody that's here. And a reminder that we are here live on the Syracuse Orange Facebook page, Syracuse Orange Football Facebook page, after every Syracuse game. If you do miss this live, we put it up on our YouTube page, our Syracuse Orange Sports YouTube page, which you can find on YouTube. You can find the YouTube link in my recaps after Syracuse football games as well. We're here thanks to our friends at Krause Health as well. An incredible thing to see at the Dome today after Syracuse looked good against Georgia Tech. Its defenses looked great all season long. Came into this game with 12 takeaways. With 10 takeaways, pardon me. That's second in the country. They leave this game, Syracuse's defense does, with 14 takeaways. So how can you be +4 in a football game and get absolutely thrashed? Well, when you can't tackle, when Duke runs right up the gut, right around the defense, and everything in between for a staggering amount of yards. Duke rushed today for 363 yards on the day. They averaged 5.8 yards per carry. Duke came into this matchup having the third lowest rushing total per game in the ACC. This was not a team that was known for running the football, but they ran it up Syracuse's throat all day long. An incredible thing to see, and Syracuse matched that with just 28 rushing yards of their own. Sean Tucker had the huge breakout game 2 weeks ago against Georgia Tech. Syracuse could not run the football today. Jawar Jordan, one of several Syracuse players that was missing from this game. Injuries all over the place for the Orange. We knew Andre Cisco wasn't going to play. Jawar Jordan and a number of players. Dakota Davis missed his 4th straight game. Jeff Cantnarku, Jahard Carter, Eric Coley either didn't play in Coley's case or got hurt during the course of the game. But that not an excuse for Syracuse. The tackling was absolutely atrocious throughout the day. It was really stunning to see, to be honest with you, considering in the first 3 games of the season, even in the 2 losses to start the year against North Carolina and Pittsburgh, the defense did its job. They were getting takeaways. Missed tackles have been somewhat of an issue, and there were some holes in Tony White's 3-3-5 defense. But today, just incredible, just pathetic, really, to see Syracuse play the way that they did. And they got the takeaways they needed. This is a Duke team that came into this game having turned the ball over 15 times. They turned it over 4 more times, nearly turned it over probably 6 or 7 times in this game, but Syracuse could do nothing. Tommy Devito was knocked out of the game with an ankle injury in the second half. We'll give you his numbers coming up. It was certainly a mixed bag for Devito, but his receivers did him no favors today. Way too many drops by Syracuse. Taj Harris was the lone bright spot on offense for Syracuse today. He had a big day. Huge touchdown catch in the first quarter. Ended up with over 130 yards on the day. But Courtney Jackson, other Syracuse receivers, just dropping too many passes. Syracuse actually did throw to the tight end a little bit today. Luke Benson had a big touchdown in this game. But 38-24 is not a representative score of how Duke dominated this game. But that rushing total certainly tells the tale. And how about this number? Duke with 36 first downs on the day. Syracuse only matching that with 11 first downs of their own. We mentioned the big number in this one, 63 rushes, 363 yards, 5.8 per carry for Duke. Syracuse matches that with just 23 rushes for 28 yards, averaging 1.2 yards per carry. On the receiving end, Syracuse, that's how they stayed in this thing, 258 receiving yards. Duke had 282 through the air. Chase Bryce went out. Gunnar Holmbert came in for a little bit. It's a great football name, right? But Chase Bryce ended up playing most of the game for Duke. So all told, in this matchup, Duke ran 102 plays for 645 yards. Syracuse ran 52 plays for 286 yards. They had half the plays that Duke did in this game. The defense just behind, missing tackles, and just a really bad performance from the Syracuse defense today, even with 4 takeaways. That's incredible that you can get 4 takeaways and still get absolutely dominated the way Syracuse did. And this was the problem last year. Syracuse gave up 50 points or more 3 times a year ago. Several games where they gave up over 500 yards, even 600 yards. But for the first 3 games, it looked like they'd kind of cured what ailed them there. But of all teams, an 0-4 Duke team that was okay offensively. They scored 31 points against Virginia Tech last week. They had come close in their first 4 games to winning, but nowhere near what Duke should have ended up with today, even with the injuries, even with what we saw from Syracuse today. They fall to 1-3. Liberty comes into the Dome next week, but certainly a lost opportunity. And for Syracuse to look that bad coming out of a bye week, yeah, you shake off the rust a little bit after some time off, but that's what makes this one even more puzzling. That Syracuse had 2 weeks to get ready for this game, to spot everything that Duke could throw at them and look that bad. That's amazing to me, that Syracuse could look that bad, that consistently, particularly on defense, after having 2 weeks off to get ready for this thing. So we mentioned Tommy Devito was knocked out of this game, to give you some individual numbers on both sides from this one. Chase Bryce for Duke, 22 of 38. Did throw a pick, but 2 touchdowns, 270 yards. He was sacked just twice on the day. On the rushing end, we gave you the total numbers for Duke, but Deion Jackson just ran all over Syracuse today. 30 carries, 169 yards. He did not get into the end zone, but his counterpart today, first time Duke had 2 100-yard rushers in a single game since 2015. Mateo Durant, 23 carries, 163 yards, 2 touchdowns on the day, including a 48-yard touchdown for him. On the receiving end, Jarrett Garner led the way for Duke with 73 yards. Bobo, another great football name. Jake Bobo, 5 catches, 70 yards for Duke today. Switching things over to the Syracuse side of things, Tommy DeVito, 13 of 26, 255 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was sacked 5 times today, sacked just once 2 weeks ago against Georgia Tech, but not only sacked, under pressure, taking sacks, throwing the ball away, and Tommy's decision-making back in questionable form today. Taj Harris, the lone bright spot on offense, 6 catches, 138 yards, including that 79-yard touchdown in the first quarter. Luke Benson had a 53-yard touchdown catch. Nice to see Syracuse throw to the tight end a little bit today. Aaron Hackett with a catch as well. But, boy, you think of that 4th and 1 play when Dino Babers rushed Tommy DeVito to the line, tried to get a first down instead of taking the points in that situation, putting Syracuse closer to Duke, or taking the points in that situation. They came up short there. Sterling Gilbert's offensive play calling, not exactly inspiring today. Again, to be fair, particularly Courtney Jackson. Too many drops from Syracuse today. Everybody out there pretty much had a drop. Some of those throws weren't perfect by DeVito, but they were catchable balls. Something really to go look at the film at, and is going to eat Syracuse alive when they look back on how many catchable balls, big plays were there that they simply just dropped in this football game. So we mentioned not a good day on the defensive end. Michael Jones had another great performance, even in a collective bad performance for the Syracuse defense. He had 13 tackles on the day. Freshman Rob Hanna with 8 tackles on the day. Jeff Cantnarku in and out of the game. Syracuse had another touchdown on the defensive end. Jeff Cantnarku picked up a play. Cam Jonas popped Chase Bryce. Cantnarku runs in for the touchdown. It looked like that Syracuse was going to overcome some of its issues on defense by the takeaways. They get another defensive touchdown, but Duke just ran it right down their throat all day long. It was spellbinding to see it. I mean, Syracuse had some tackling issues through the season, but this was just pathetic on the day. So, really defensively, the story was they got gashed, and they got gashed big time. On the defensive end, couldn't run the ball, and that's what they did well against Georgia Tech. They ran the football well with Sean Tucker. They didn't do that today. They got the takeaways they needed today, and boy, if there's any lesson that comes from this, Vegas knows, man. I questioned that all week. I wrote a couple columns about it, talked about it on my radio program. Duke was set as a 2.5-point favorite. That line kind of fluctuated throughout the week and ended up being basically a pick by the time kickoff came today at noon. Vegas certainly knows. And, a hungry dog hunts faster. And Duke wanted to win. And Duke needed to win. and they finally got a win today. And Syracuse has its tail between its legs as they go into the Liberty game next week, and then they play Clemson the week after that on the road. So what was looking like maybe Syracuse had turned things around, a promising win over Georgia Tech, they're right back to square one here today with this loss to Duke and 1-3 on the season. So let's hop in the comments and see what you guys are saying here today. Michael says Liberty beats them next week. Matthew says Syracuse gave up 36 first downs, 657 total yards. Yeah, I'm spellbinded by that. I really am. That defense looks so good for 3 games. And again, you got to mention some of the injuries there, but that is not an excuse for the yards. That is not an excuse for the first downs. It's certainly not an excuse. The poor tackling today. Yeah, I brought up Jeff Cantnarku on one of those touchdown runs. I lost track of how many really Duke had, but on one of those touchdown runs, just a pathetic effort by Jeff Cantnarku, just kind of tried to lay his shoulder into the runner. Where did the technique go? Where did the fundamentals go? Again, after a bye week, when you're in a bye week, what you focus on are those very things: technique, fundamentals, get back to basics a little bit because you have extra time to work on yourself, if you will, to work on your team. It's not exclusively game planning for the next opponent, but that too. And Deion Jackson, and I want to shout him out here, give him a proper name recognition. Durant, Jackson and Durant. I mean, where did that come from? Credit to David Cutcliffe for the game plan that he had today, but I don't know why Chase Bryce even threw the ball. There were a couple of plays where Duke found some success in the air, but this was just, they came in and ran down your throat. And that's what's got to make you really upset as a Syracuse fan, and what's got to really make you question things as a coach or a player on this team as well. Duke didn't come in and razzle-dazzle you. Duke didn't come in and have some sort of wacky game plan. They just ran it straight down Syracuse's throat. If anything, Duke's biggest weapon on offense is Noah Gray, their tight end. He's going to end up in the National Football League. He came into this game with 19 catches, over 200 yards, couple touchdowns. He was pretty much a non-factor until late in the game. So you actually took away what Duke did best. But for Jackson and Durant to run like that, just pathetic. So, man, all that progress, how good Syracuse's defense looked. I even contemplated that the identity of Syracuse football could be its defense this year. It still might be, but, you know, there came a time when the offense was going to have to step up and carry the day. And as much as Syracuse had its faults on offense today, there were a couple of drives there. Syracuse was in this game in the fourth quarter. You know, it's 30-24 in the fourth quarter. Syracuse scores. At that point, there's about 10 minutes to go, and you got to ask your defense to make a stop. And that's what your defense had done at times throughout the year, though. You go back to the North Carolina and Pittsburgh games, and they could not make a stop in the fourth quarter because they were just gassed because their offense did not do them any favors. That was not the case in this game. The offense did you a favor. The offense put a drive together. They scored to cut the lead to 30-24, and all you can ask your defense to do is get a stop. And Duke just thrashed Syracuse once again, went right up the field, not only scored, put in a 2-point conversion, and sunk Syracuse's battleship in that case. So a stunning role reversal today, a stunning step back for Syracuse on the defensive end. Daryl in the chat says, Axe, what a day. Drop passes, can't tackle. Someone needs to really question strength and conditioning. This team, including last year, is like a walking MASH unit. Moving forward, if Tommy's out for any extended time, the 2 freshmen better get ready. Rex will be the starter, but we'll need a backup for him. This could get worse before it gets better. For the people who say fire Dino, go away. But he sees some trouble there, but better days ahead. Thanks, Daryl, for the comment. Look, I don't think we're at the point where you have to play the freshmen. Those 2 freshmen, Dylan Markowitz and Jacobian Morgan, are raw. They are. I mean, if you're putting in those freshmen, you're basically throwing the season away. Now, the irony is Syracuse could still go to a bowl game. There's no bowl limits this year. It's that weird kind of COVID season. Not everybody's playing an even schedule. There's no win limits when it comes to bowl games here. But still, you know, the product on the field right now is showing. But, man, if you're getting to, you got to play the freshman quarterbacks, that shows you how far this team would have fallen. We'll see what's up with Devito. It looked like an ankle injury. Not that Syracuse is too forthcoming with injury information, but we'll see what Dino Baber says about that after this game. Andre Cisco didn't play. Jawar Jordan didn't play. We mentioned some of those injuries. I don't know about Cisco. It's one of those things from what I hear. It's not an injury. It's not a clean injury, right? It's not like, you know, you break an ankle, 6 weeks you're back, right? There are certain injuries you can kind of put a pretty definitive timetable on. That's not the case with Cisco's injury, and he's contemplating whether to come back at all, considering he's got an NFL future ahead of him here. So we'll see how that goes today. But they had done well without him, and with 2 weeks to get ready, knowing you weren't going to have Cisco, that was the effort they put out there. Jahad Carter was on and off the field today. I've been impressed with him so far. But Garrett Williams, a freshman corner for Syracuse, had looked pretty good so far, had a few pass breakups, missed a lot of tackles out there today. And Duke just picked on the young players. The young players had been a bonus for Syracuse up to this point. They'd actually played pretty well up to this point, but a lot of young guys really got picked on today. Charlie saying it looks like Dino has lost his team. Something just isn't right. Jermaine saying that Syracuse is going to lose to Clemson 63-0. Already got a score prediction on that one. Yeah, that is surely going to be an ugly game at Clemson for sure. Some other comments as you guys go along there. Some fire Dino comments there. I mean, that's not going to happen. Syracuse just signed him to a contract extension, and they would owe him a ton of money if they fired him this year or next year. So I'm not saying you can't say that. You have a right to your opinion, but it's just not feasible. It's just not something they're going to do at this point. So you got to wonder how Syracuse is going to recover from this one. Liberty, let me check here while we're yakking about it, because Liberty was in action today. Liberty's got some athletes. You know, Syracuse started last year against Liberty, and it was a 24-0 game. It was the first game of the season. Remember, Hugh Freeze, the head coach, was coaching with in a hospital bed, right? He was ahead of the game when it came to coaching on Zoom and coaching remotely and doing things remotely, as we're in that world today, right? So today, Liberty beat University of Louisiana Monroe 40-7. It should be noted UL Monroe is 0-5. They're a pretty bad team, but Liberty's 4-0. They're 3-0 at home. They'll have to go on the road to play Syracuse. There were some question marks as the season began about Liberty's COVID testing. They've had a lot of controversy off the field, if you will. Jerry Falwell Jr., I'm sure many of you have heard that story and what happened there with the pool boy and the whole thing. And, you know, he's always been a controversial figure for a number of reasons politically, and now with the COVID thing. But they're playing. They seem to be following protocols. John Wildhack and ACC officials have made it pretty clear that if ACC teams are going to play these non-conference games, this would be the one non-conference game on the slate for Syracuse, that they have to follow ACC testing protocols, which is 3 times a week. At the bare minimum, you have to test players. They've been doing that so far. They've gotten 4 games in. Malik Willis, pretty mobile quarterback. He transferred in, I believe, from Auburn. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but today he was 11 for 29, 177 yards. Also had 87 yards on the ground and a touchdown. So given how much Syracuse struggled to stop the run game today, you've got a quarterback coming in next week to the Dome that can run the football. DJ Stubbs, a great receiver for Liberty. He's going to be in the NFL conversation. He had 2 catches for 69 yards on the day. So just kind of a little sneak peek at what Liberty is going to bring to the table next week. But that, you would think on the surface, would be a game that Syracuse should, will, and can win. But I don't think we can assume anything after seeing how Syracuse performed today against an 0-4 Duke team that, yeah, had challenged Virginia Tech, had challenged Boston College, had looked good in spots. But, man, at home, coming off a bye week, you got to win that game. And all Syracuse did was take some big, big steps back in this one. John saying that Dino can't recruit, can't develop players, and won't fire Kavanaugh for some reason. That's the offensive line coach. That offensive line decimated by injury. I'm not saying that's an excuse for how they perform, because they managed to run the ball and protect Tommy Devito against Georgia Tech. Duke's got 2 really good pass rushers and Chris Rumpf and Victor Dimukeji, but missing Dakota Davis and some key players and some depth, I don't think people want to hear it. They just want to see an offensive line perform. They just want to see it. But this one was not fully on the offense today. This one's squarely on the defense today. Even getting 4 takeaways, Syracuse didn't cash in those takeaways, but they could not tackle. They couldn't. I mean, Duke just ran a basic offense today. Duke didn't come in and razzle-dazzle you. Duke didn't come in and throw something at Syracuse they had not seen before. They just ran over them, which is stunning to see. So, look, at some point, the offense was going to have to carry the day for the Orange. But what we saw today is when this defense struggles, that this is not an offense that can carry the day. They have success in spots, They can connect on certain plays. We mentioned the Taj Harris play, the Luke Benson play. When Devito finds some openings, he can connect. And there were way too many drops on the offensive end today. But what happens is when Syracuse becomes one-dimensional, as we saw in the first 2 games of the season, it can't run the football. Teams just take advantage of it. And you put the strain on Devito in the passing game to make play after play after play. I was surprised. Tucker had a couple of good runs, had his moments. But look, he's a freshman. And to put all that pressure on him, he kind of put it out there to do it. He grabbed the number 1 job with Jordan hurt, with Abdul Adams gone, with Jarvian Howard gone. Jarvian Howard, by the way, who had over 100 yards against Duke last year. That should be noted. Mo Neal did as well, who, of course, graduated last year. But Tucker kind of took that job and showed he's the number 1 guy. Couldn't get it going today because Duke knew that's their offense. And if they can't get it going, then they felt like they could survive on it. But to get 4 takeaways, but give up over 600 total yards, over 300 rushing yards, you're not going to win games that way. That's why Syracuse lost so many games last year, even when the offense was somewhat capable of doing things. That defense was so bad. It's why both coordinators were changed. And while we're on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, I mentioned a couple of the plays. I want to be careful how I frame this. And this is a criticism of Dino Babers, too, because it's his team, it's his offense. Ultimately, he makes the call. But whatever influence Sterling Gilbert is having on this offense, I'm just not impressed. He's had his moments. There's been a few times where I feel like he's recognized the situation and adapted accordingly. But, there was a 2nd and 10 play in this game where he runs just a toss sweep to Tucker. Even in the Georgia Tech game, there were more slants. There were more get rid of the ball quick passes from Devito to guys like Anthony Quealy and Nykeem Johnson. We saw a little bit of that today, but not enough. Again, they did throw the ball to the tight end more, but not enough. I just don't see the creativity. I don't see decision-making. I think that 4th and 1 play is questionable. I think you take the points at home in that spot. But as Dino Babers said this week, to use a reference that he said on his radio program, that he and Sterling Gilbert are salt and pepper shakers. Like, they're in lockstep. They are a partnership. That's why he brought him in. They had coached together in a couple of spots before, but by and large, this offense is boring. This offense is not creative, and I'm not impressed with the influence that Gilbert is putting on this, and I'm not impressed with where Babers is at this point. Again, being fair with the offensive line injuries and a couple of other things, but we were sold that this was an offensive guru here, and we're just not seeing the progress that you think you would make there. And whatever Gilbert's trying to put in there, I don't see it after 4 games. But there is talent there. Taj Harris and Tommy DeVito are connecting. He's certainly a number 1 receiver on this team, following in line of a number of number 1 receivers that Syracuse has had. Tristan Jackson's in the National Football League. Amba Edetawu, who set records a couple years ago. Steve Ishmael, who carried over from the Schaefer administration into Babers. Every year Syracuse has that top target, and Taj Harris is that, so I have no fault with him. But even with talent with Quealy, the enigma that is Ed Hendricks, we hear so much about Ed Hendricks, but he just doesn't get out there. I know he's been battling through some injuries there, but you see the talent, but they're just not getting them the football in the way that they need to, and it all comes back to running the ball. So I'm surprised that Syracuse looked that bad. I really am. I could expect the defense to take a step back at some point. They couldn't be as dominant as they were in the first 3 games. But to do it against Duke, I mean, Duke came in. I'm going to give you some of the offensive numbers Duke had coming into this game. And to just run all over Syracuse, to me, is pretty surprising. So coming into this game, Duke had been off to its worst start since 2006. Duke was last in the ACC in scoring, 3rd to last in rushing. They led the conference in turnovers, and again, they had 4 turnovers today. Duke was 2nd to last in offensive efficiency. Now, the only team ahead of them in that category was Syracuse, by the way. 9th in the ACC in passing offense. I believe they were 10th in the ACC in running the football. Nothing about Duke, other than a couple of talented players, made you say that they could come in and do what they did today. So Syracuse really licking their wounds after this one. An utterly disappointing performance at the Dome today, to say the least. a surprising one at that. So we'll see how Syracuse recovers next week against Liberty. We'll be right back here on Facebook Live after the game. It's another noon kickoff, so right around 3:30 or so when the game's over, we'll be right back with you here on Facebook Live. Thanks to Krause Health. If you missed this, you can always catch it on YouTube on our Syracuse Orange Sports YouTube page, or I popped that right in my recap on syracuse.com, which comes out Sunday mornings. Hope you guys can read that. All of our great coverage from Nate Mink, Chris Carlson, Mike Curtis, the great photos and video from Dennis Nett as well. We'll be right back at it here next week after Syracuse takes on Liberty, and that's become a game that Syracuse has to win to keep any interest in the 2020 season going here. That was the thing going into Georgia Tech, and as it turned out, that was a temporary reprieve because Duke came in and knocked Syracuse out with an uppercut today. Thanks for hanging with us today. My name's Brent Axe. We'll talk to you next week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, okay?